Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about the lawsuit now brought by the District of Columbia against the administration's really widespread presence there. Now, DC is something of a special case under the law and under the facts. Under the law, it has a special relationship as the nation's capital. That's from the founding, but more than that, it's memorialized in a home rule kind of statute that sets out the supposed responsibilities of Congress and the district itself to exercise home rule. Really, the president, while is the sort of nominal commander in chief of the forces, the Home Rule Act very much apportions responsibility to DC, which has its own police force, functions as a normal city, etc. That's the first. But then the second is the magnitude of the invasion here. So we have in other cities the isolated kind of incursion of a bunch of immigration troops, or in some instances in California, troops supplemented by federalized National Guards for that actual state, unwelcome by the states in question, like California, which has sued. In DC, we have not only Trump's having said, you National Guard in DC, you 800 or so work for me, but some 1,500 others from 7 different states. Trump just said, ollie ollie income free, everybody into the pool, and let's clean up DC together. Who's with me? And some, including Republicans, by the way, were not with him and said, we don't see an emergency here, as is always the case with these operations and efforts to really bring a military presence to the streets of normal cities. It's all based on findings of emergency situations that are at best way over dramatized and at worst just complete fiction. But that's the third thing in DC is Trump has played that emergency card stronger than anywhere else. Indeed, he's played it from his candidacy when he's been talking about why the district is such a hellhole and we're going to clean it up. So he said this is a public safety emergency. You have his the U.S. attorney handpicked for DC saying the same thing, and that's just completely discordant with the facts on the ground, which are that DC, not a halcyon place of no crime, but a place where violent crime's been declining, is now at something of a 30-year low, has gotten better even in 2025. And in other words, there's a very strong, this has been true in all the cases where you see the courts less and less crediting Trump's assertions, but there's a very strong inference that Trump's not trying to clean up DC. Trump's trying to exercise power, throw his weight around, and have the presence of boots on the street. One of the more effective parts of the complaint filed by the DC Attorney General is a lot of actual pictures of what's going on there, and it is harrowing. We have basically, as the complaint sets out, you have over 2,200 National Guard troops from 7 states and DC basically patrolling the streets of the district dressed in military fatigues, carrying rifles, driving armored vehicles, doing checkpoints, being much looser about so-called law enforcement functions than at least they purport to be in other cities. And DC is saying, look, this is a violation, for starters, of the Home Rule Act. And they already won a sort of initial victory here. Pam Bondi had overstepped her authority and said, I'm now in charge of the DC Police Department, and I'm putting the head of the DEA there. And it was pretty clear from a hearing in federal court, no, that's not the way it works, Ms. Attorney General. And they backed away from there. But still, there's been since then an increased presence as all these other states have come in. So the first thing they're saying is that is not part one. We didn't ask you. And that's just a common trope of all these things where you have the feds coming in and the instances of authority and in similar situations have been where states have said, please, including in DC in 68 in the wake of the MLK assassination, come and help us right the ship for a while and then leave. Here, no, they've just come in and you're not welcome. And you're in violation of the Home Rule Act, which basically says it's for us to decide. Then second, they say that Congress has put into place a compact about what you can do with these other National Guard troops from the 7 different states. And unless you actually mobilize them, which Trump hasn't done, you can't just send them into other states and say, okay, now you guys are kicking ass and taking names elsewhere because you said you would and I asked you to. That's a flagrant violation of the other state's sovereignty. But then finally, we're now seeing the initial fruits of the Judge Breyer opinion from California last week, where he said this is a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. So what they're saying is, look, us too, in addition to these special violations, because we're DC and you haven't followed the specific kind of regulatory menu that is laid out here, you are violating the Constitution and federal law because you're doing here what you're doing in DC. You're doing a basic law enforcement function. You're taking these militia and deputizing them, and they're doing things that are, absolutely violating the Fourth Amendment, subjecting us to irreparable harm. Okay, so that is, we don't have the answer yet of DC. The big difference here, as I said, is for starters, you've got this different legal setting, and that's the administration will try to rely on that. But on the other hand, you really have sort of a vivid portrayal to the extent the American people, I think, are starting to turn against and kind of viscerally reject what Trump is shooting to do. DC is really the case in point, because whereas in California you have specific kind of instances, even abusive instances where people are overstepping the bounds, here you have an occupied city. There's no way around it. We'll put a link to the complaint in this YouTube, but it has a very effective use of graphics and the like to show what you can really see is this occupied city. So this will now go. The DC Attorney General will now be able to take this into DC court, which will decide it. But will the kinds of evidence that are being brought to bear really are, dovetail with the kind of nightmare scenario of the authoritarian strongman coming in and taking charge of the nation's capital and having, the very image of what Posse Comitatus is supposed to prevent, basically, tough military, people in fatigued, unidentified, patrolling the city, a city under occupation. So DC says enough. And even though the administration will say, well, we've got special reasons that we can do this in DC, you'll hear DC say back, yeah, but you didn't follow those reasons. Moreover, that you still can't do this domestic law enforcement situation. You still can't come in and elbow us out of the way and have your way. And that's what this case is going to be is set up to now determine. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.